All right, so my research paper was on the Mishipeshu, which is a creature from the uh, Great Lakes. It's known as the Great Lynx or the underwater panther. Um, it's largely what we base the Hodag off of in Rhinelander. So on to the second slide, the introduction. I just want to find out more about the Mishipeshu than I previously have been exposed to. And I just want to offer some insight between the correlation between the Mishipeshu and the Hodag and how these similarities are just too close to not be stolen. So I talked with some people in Rhinelander to get their opinion, some friends, family, neighbors, and most of the community in Rhinelander adores the Hodag. It's a symbol of community. It unifies our community. Sometimes people also use it as a source of parenting in a way. You can say, "Don't go out late. The Hodag will get you." Stuff like that. But oral stories like these and tales like these that we tell to our kids in Rhinelander are actually they derive from the Mishipeshu and Anishinaabe mothers telling their sons and daughters that before they go out at night, they best remember that if they go playing in the lake or anything like that, the Mishipeshu might get them. And I think that was just to make sure that the kids weren't drowning at night and whatnot. Whether it was a genuine belief, I mean, the Mishipeshu was used for some nations and tribes, thought of it as like this great water beast that controlled or dealt with like things like the weather, harvest. So let's say maybe it wasn't exactly as rainy of a month and you did need rain. Maybe the Mishipeshu was mad or something, but usually the Mishipeshu could be bad fortune or good fortune, just depend on what was happening. But anyways, I gathered that most of my friends and family understood the myth that the Hodag was a forest-dwelling creature, grand in size, with a horn-spiked spine like an alligator, a long tail, and had the mouth of like a saber with two large like dagger teeth. Lore stories differ, but they usually fall along the same line of people that might even say they've seen the Hodag. It's usually, I saw it in my backyard and blah, 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 right? And of course, these things are definitely alike. The Hodag is related to the Mishipeshu. But the origin story of the Hodag, men who found it, is just, it's remarkable because the items, moving on to the next slide, of the Mishipeshu, hand-woven items or rock carvings or cave paintings predate any existence of the Hodag. But anyways, now we get on to a few more of the solid facts. As I said before, children would often play games about the Mishipeshu, bring it into the game, where if they were swimming in, lakes and rivers, they would play the Mishipeshu, basically a version of Shark. If you've ever played Shark in the water, where you gotta chase after your friends or swim after them in the water, and if you get them, you got them. So it sort of reminds us that people from way back when, people who were here before us, indigenous people, they were just as playful. It's like we get so self-absorbed with the highlights of modernity. It really takes us back when we can appreciate to see these sort of things still alive today, but also reminiscent of things in the past that those stories and histories have carried on. And while we might not play the Mishipeshu is going to get us, I know sometimes we've played, the Hodag will get us. And I incorrectly put branding. I don't necessarily think it's a branded thing, the Mishipeshu. But the artifacts date from 1600s to 1800s. It's very obvious this has been around. Now my question is, the Hodag myth created by Eugene Shepard was obviously a myth for cash. It was a cash flow operation. He was making $500 a weekend, which is about $3,000 today, showing off the Hodag and Rhinelander, and he capitalized off of Native American art, history, and folklore, and influenced our very long-lasting tourist economy and community spirit. which we haven't really owed publicly to the Mishipeshu nor the Anishinaabe folklore of the Mishipeshu that goes back a very long way. And often the Hodag doesn't really represent the Mishipeshu in the way that it did for Native Americans and indigenous people, because we don't look at it as a figure that can control the weather, the lakes, the waves, etc. We don't really look at things like that. We don't look at it as this grand creature that operates throughout the Great Lakes region, let alone Rhineland or just some forestry. The original Mishipeshu is an underwater panther. That means it's it's amphibian. And this project was really a personal endeavor because my journey learning Native American art I really started to understand some aspects of it in one of my history classes, one of Brandon Ludke's history classes. And I began to take deep consideration of Native troubles and the projects that spring from them. And as I've stated in my presentation, I'm from Minnesota, and I lived in Renville County for most of my life. And there I had a lot of Lower Sioux and Dakota friends. And it was very helpful for them to expose me to some of the things about the Dakota and Lower Sioux. For instance, I've done a project on this, the Dakota War of 1862. And when I was very young, I would often visit the Battle of Birch Coulee site. It's in Morton, Minnesota. It's 30 minutes from where I live, as well as understanding why my friends were celebrating the 38 plus 2 anniversary. Not a lot of people know this. I bet if you asked this, most people wouldn't know. But on December 26, 1862, after the Dakota War of 1862 basically was over, resulted in U.S. victory over the Dakota tribes, Mankato, Minnesota, the largest mass execution in American history took place. And President Abraham Lincoln ordered the execution of 38 Dakotan warriors for their reactionary revolution to the U.S. government's incompetence. A refusal to acknowledge their treaties previous before the Treaty of 1851. And in early 1863, 2 more of those Dakota warriors were executed. So, sparing none, I guess you could say, it really sparked my interest into considering the value behind Native American art and history and folklore. Because if you don't, we let things like that sort of die in time. I don't want anybody to forget Minnesota, nor anybody in the country to forget that that is where the largest mass execution took place, because a lot of people don't know this. This was one and done, one go, 38 men plus 2 to the gallows to get shot. However they were slain, they were killed, they were butchered, and their treaties were still never acknowledged. They never got sufficient resource. And mostly why this is so personal to me is because I don't recall anybody from my childhood really say anything bad about the U.S. military or the government during this time, because it was the spark. It was probably 2010, so it's still the spark of patriotism in the post 9/11 feelings of hatred towards anything that demonizes the U.S. military or U.S. history. So when finally I break out of that in my teens, starting to be 15, 16, I look more into it and come to find Little Crow, Chief Little Crow, Dakotan chief of the Dakota tribe, very, very famous, sent letters to U.S. senators calling for aid and support to the Native American people. And this is very reminiscent of what we're dealing with today, right now, with Palestine and Israel. And that conflict is that you have an oppressive regime occupying land which is not theirs. But anyways, sorry. A statesperson, Andrew Myrick of Minnesota, in response to a letter written by Chief Little Crow, stated in the letter that he doesn't care, if they're starving, and if they're, starving that bad, quote, let them eat their own dung. So, that's really just, you can't defend that, and you can't explain that other than there's very obviously some sort of power dynamic and control that we can see it's very reflective of the conflicts that are going on in our world today, and how we react to those conflicts. How I know I react to this Palestinian conflict, this revolution. Um, it's comforting to know that in the same thought, I recognize that Native Americans are owed a lot more than we give them or promise to give them, and that I hope this country works towards a few more steps to really um, open the gates for Indigenous people to sort of reclaim their history and their culture, and obviously a generous chunk of what is or was taking their land. So, but apart from this, I don't really have much else to say other than my citations on the last slide. This art piece on the right here was done by Anishinaabe woman. I did not include the citation. If you need it, I can get it. However, it seems to me to be, this is up to interpretation, but it seems to me to be that there's some sort of fuss going on. There maybe these are snake tongues that are being, I see, coming out of the mouth. So maybe that's some sort of, maybe this is a group of women or men who you don't really want to confide in, obviously, if they're all snakes. But they seem to be floating above the water. So maybe that's some sort of myth or some sort of like sirens maybe, but by Anishinaabe folklore standards. But anyways, this has been long. I probably won't be able to post this attach it, but I will send this to an email to the professor, and hopefully he can get it out to all of you so that you can listen. But anyways, thank you for listening. I appreciate you understanding my rambles and listening. Thank you.